common mistakes on the FAFSA form. And before I introduce the presenter today, I just got a couple of housekeeping items that I wanted to touch base on with you all. First of all, this is the first out of 3 that we're going to be offering from the IASFAA Community Outreach Committee. The next one is going to be on Tuesday, December 3rd at 10 a.m. and the topic that day is going to be about verification. And then on Wednesday, February the 5th at 10 a.m., we're going to do a topic being financial aid packages. And all of those I will get out on the listservs and broadcast or advertise out for everyone to sign up about a month ahead of time for those two topics. But today, what we're going to be talking about is how to avoid common mistakes on the FAFSA form. And the presenter is Sarah Soroka from the University of Dubuque. Before I turn it over to Sarah to share this information with you, one thing, we have 78 people that have been signed up for this webinar, which is awesome. Really appreciate everyone jumping on to hear about this timely topic that's going to be starting now in less than a week again on October 1st. But if you have questions as we're going throughout this webinar, please go ahead and use the question pane in the toolbar on the right-hand side that you see. Type in a question, and then during the presentation, as Sarah is presenting, I will try to chime in when there's a question to ask Sarah during the presentation. So at any time you have one, use the question pane, and I will make sure that we try to address those questions that you have as we're going throughout the presentation. So again, thank you very much for attending, and without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. Thank you, Sarah, for presenting today.
Sure, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for logging in. So, as you said, this is how to avoid common mistakes on the FAFSA. And what we're going to go through is just some of the more common ones that we see here at the university or that I've seen throughout my years here. So, just to start off. So, the first biggest mistake is families hear something on the radio or an advertisement or see something online about filing the FAFSA, let us help you. Always make sure that it is the FAFSA.gov, not something that is FAFSA.com or somebody else that pay us $50 and we'll help you file this. The FAFSA is always free. It is a free application for federal student aid. So it's right there in the name. It is FAFSA.gov. You can type that in. There is a new URL that's listed there. It's pretty long, studentaid.ed.gov/SA/FAFSA. But if you just type in that FAFSA.gov, works just the same. So always remind them, never pay for the FAFSA. It can be done if they need help with it. They can always call the school. Or get help from the high schools or the admissions counselors, wherever that may be, but never pay for it. When we get to FAFSA.gov, it's going to have them log in, and you can see on here there's 2 different logins. On the left-hand side says I am the student, or I am a parent, preparer, or student from a freely associated state. So the student, we recommend that the student always does this because it is their application. It's them moving on to adulthood, doing the stuff for themselves, but we know a lot of parents do it as well. So if it's the student, you're going to have them click on that I am the student, and then it's going to ask for an FSA ID, which they'll have throughout the rest of their career, through college and actually afterwards too. So if it is a parent, though, that is doing it, which that happens a lot. So if a parent's completing the FAFSA for the student, they will click on that one that is on the right that says I am a parent or preparer, and then enter the student's information, and then continue on their way. So this FSA ID, so students need one and a parent needs one, but only one parent needs one. But the students, when they have it, so we like it to be something that they're going to remember, using a personal email, not a school email, not like a high school email where they're not going to be able to get back into it. Because this email that it's linked to, they're going to use all the time. We always recommend to write down their FSA ID and their password. Passwords do need to be changed every so often, but keep it somewhere safe so that they can come back to it. When you only use it once or twice a year, it's real easy to forget that. So a lot of students here at least will like take a picture of it with their phone and put it in their password safe files in their phones. So they'll need this ID if they're going to make corrections on the FAFSA. And if they take out student loans, they'll need it to do some counseling and promissory notes and stuff like that. So as I said, the parents need one too, but only one parent. So this is how each, the student and the parent, will sign the FAFSA. So if they do not have an FSA ID, it's going to delay the process quite a bit if they're not signing it with their FSA ID. There is other options to sign it if it's absolutely not possible, if the parent has no internet access, they're really not good on the computer, or whatever the case may be. But it is much easier timing-wise to go on and do the FSA ID for the parent as well to sign it with the student. So when they do log in, it's going to ask for a save key right away before even starting the FAFSA. This save key is so that the student can save it to come back to it later. So if they don't get to submit it, they can also use the save key if their parents are not there and the parent needs to do it at a later time, or do their part at a later time. Then the parent then can log in. It'll ask for the save key. Okay, here it is, and it'll take them right back to that spot of what it was. It's usually 4 to 8 characters long. I always tell them just 4 because you may only need it once. If they ever forget it, it's real easy to get it when you go back into it. It'll say if you forgot your save key, and I think it asks for like a zip code. So it is pretty easy if you don't remember it, but it is important to have that save key in there. It won't actually let you continue on. Then you can save it just in case something would happen as well while you're going along in that process and something happens to the computer, something shuts down or whatever, then it's going to save and bring you right back to where you were. Sorry about that. All right, so some of the common mistakes on the FSA ID. So the student has one and the parent has one. So the first mistake on here, entering information that doesn't match your FSA ID information. When they are prompted to do an FSA ID to create one, it's going to ask for, they're going to create their username, going to create a password, they're going to ask for birth date, social security number, address, challenge questions, and telephone number, a lot of different information. So when they're doing the FAFSA then, if their information is not the same as what was on their FSA ID, so if they switch up a number in their social security number or their date of birth or something like that, it's going to give them an error. So their information is sent to the Social Security Administration. So this verifies all that information when they do that FSA ID. So when they go on to the FAFSA and they do 6, 7, 8, first 3 of their social security number, and it's supposed to be 6, 7, 9, it's going to come back and say you've got some mistakes after you do that FAFSA, after they submit it all. It's going to really be time consuming for them to fix that after it's already been completed. So always make sure that information is triple checked. I've had it happen on the FSA ID as well, where their social security number was wrong when they created that FSA ID. So it may make them wait 3 days to go through the Social Security Administration. And then it's going to say, hey, this information isn't correct. We need to fix everything. So when they're doing the FSA ID, make sure that everything is in there correct. The other one on here is mixing up FSA IDs. So the parent and the student have to have one. There's a lot of times where the parent creates it for the student, or the student creates it for the parent, and ends up getting the information mixed up. Or they're trying to use the same email address for both, which you cannot do. It's linked to, everyone has their own email address. So it's really, really important that if you are with a parent who is creating it for their student, that they are entering the student's information. Enter something, these challenge questions, make sure they are wrote down, that they're not mixing anything up, because it's going to really delay that process quite a bit if we're mixing everything up. And then it's not going to be right on the FAFSA as well either. So very important for that. I do always tell them, this is, as a student, this is your FSA ID. I do have them, if they need to, if their parents are not real good on a computer, okay, well, let's help them create it. But I usually have mom on the phone, or with us, or dad, or whoever the parent is, going along with it, and the student is actually just typing it up. So make sure that those two are not mixed up at all. Okay, so match the FSA ID to the parent. So the parent who's using the FSA ID, because only one parent has to have that, make sure that they are selecting the correct one from the drop-down as far as when to sign it. If they don't remember which parent was listed as parent 1 or parent 2, you can always go back in the FAFSA and check. But if parent 2 is mom and she has the FSA ID, parent 1 is the dad, when it gets to the point to sign it, they have to select, well, which parent are you? She would check parent 2. Otherwise, it's going to say, oh, you know what, you don't have an FSA ID, or this is not correct. And then you're going to think that, well, maybe I just forgot my password. So go through that, and here come out it's just whether parent 1 or parent 2. Confusing the parent information with the student information. So we know that there's a lot of parents out there who will file the FAFSA for their kids, and that's okay to do. We just don't recommend it. We don't even really like to hear that it's being done, because it is the student's FAFSA. It is their application. So as much as we can't control that, we understand that parents will do it for them. If that is the case, make sure that that parent is really looking at those questions and answering them as a student until it gets to that parent information. So when the FAFSA form says you or your, it's referring to the student. So make sure it's their information that they are entering in. When it's asking for the parent information, it specifies that in the question. Another big part of the FAFSA, which is probably the most scariest, I guess, part for families on the FAFSA is the tax information. The best thing to do is to use the option that says IRS Data Retrieval Tool. This works really, really slick when it works. It's the easiest way to do it. Most of the time, then, they won't be selected for any type of verification information or tax information after that FAFSA is submitted. So that IRS Data Retrieval Tool will actually load the information from the IRS into the FAFSA. Once it's in there too, it'll say underneath those specific questions that it's asking, it'll say we brought this in from IRS data. So you know that everything is fine. It'll take the information right from the taxes and put them in the FAFSA for them. Okay. The second bullet point on here, information transferred from the IRS, is blocked out on the FAFSA. I know it was, and I haven't seen one yet this year, or what it is for next year, I guess, for the 2021. But I don't think that that's on there anymore. I don't think it's blacked out anymore. If a parent is filed married, filing jointly, they have to enter the parent that is listed on the tax form for the data retrieval tool. So if there's parent 1 and parent 2, parent 2 is the one who was listed first on their taxes. when that data retrieval tool takes them out to the IRS website, it's going to ask for the name, and it's only going to ask for that first person's name, first person listed on the taxes. So if parent 2 was out there doing this, they'll want to make sure it's whoever is listed first on those taxes that they have, that the information is asking for. So the data retrieval tool will ask for name, how it's filed, and address as it is on the taxes. And then, so now since we're using prior year tax information, this year, this 2019-20, we use 2017 taxes. So this upcoming one of 2020 to 2021, we'll use 2018 taxes. So we're always going to be 2 years behind. So if they are bringing in their tax information, want to make sure that they're using the correct year. We have some who, they may bring in 3 years of taxes, but we only want to use for this upcoming one will be 2018 tax return. So like I said, the data retrieval tool works really slick when it works, but it's not always available. So there's different reasonings why we would not be able to use it. So some of those are listed here. So if a student or the parent is married, but the spouse filed as married filing separately, or if they filed as head of household. And they have to be married filing joint if the parents are married or if the student is married to use that IRS data retrieval tool. If the parent's marital status is unmarried and both legal parents are living together, it's also you're not going to be able to use that retrieval tool. The other one is if they had a foreign tax return or filed Puerto Rican taxes. Otherwise, the students or parents who filed their tax returns within the last 3 weeks of doing that FAFSA is not going to be on there either. However, that doesn't seem to be too much of a problem unless they had so many extensions to get it to that point, because we're using prior years. So since right now in 2020 to 2021 and using 2018 taxes, they should have their 2018 taxes filed. So this really isn't too big of a problem anymore, but we have seen it once in a while. The other big thing is about dependency. As they're going through the FAFSA, there's questions on there that ask about dependency. This determines, there's let me see how many there are, quite a few questions that can determine if the student is going to be a dependent student or an independent student. Out of the list of questions, if you answer yes to any of them, even just one, it will make them an independent student. So students sometimes will say, well, I'm on my own because I pay my own bills, I file taxes. That doesn't make them an independent student. These are some of the questions that are on the FAFSA when it's going through the dependency and whether they should be a dependent or not. If they are 24 or older, they will be independent. If they're on a master's or a doctorate degree, they're considered independent. Married or separated but not divorced. If they have any kids or dependents that they take care of. If their parents were deceased, if they were in foster care, if they're an emancipated minor or an other legal guardianship, which legal guardianship is not your parents. It gets confusing sometimes with that. They think that they do have a guardianship because they have parents, but that's not it. If they're at risk of being homeless, or if they were active duty or a veteran of the armed forces, they are all considered independent if they answer yes to any of those questions, even if it's just one. Sometimes they will answer them on mistake. If they, like the emancipated minor or legal guardianship question, they might answer yes to that, thinking that they are in legal guardianship because they have parents. So if that happens where there actually should be a dependent and they selected one of these as yes without realizing or really looking at the question, it's going to hold them up as far as their FAFSA and getting awarded goes. Okay, so the parent information if the student is a dependent. If the student's parents are divorced or separated, answer the questions about the parent he or she lived with more during the past 12 months. So if parents are not living together, we're going to use the parent information of who gave the most support or who they lived with most out of those last 12 months. If the biological parents are divorced, but the parent with who they live with is remarried, they're going to use their step parents' information. So if the student is living with mom and mom is remarried, they're going to use that spouse's information. And they're going to answer that question as parent is remarried. If the parents are divorced and only the parent with whom the student lived less or neither is remarried, then they're going to choose divorce. So if the student lives with the mom and mom is not remarried or is divorced and isn't remarried, they're going to choose that as divorced and use the mom's information. It's just going to be then one parent on there. If the biological parents are divorced and living in the same household, then the student has to select married or remarried because they are both living in the house and both providing support. If they were not living together, it'd be different. Then we would go back to that either divorced or remarried answer. So if the parents were divorced in 2018 and the parent the student lived with was not the one who claimed the student, only include the information for the parent that the student lived with more. This last line on here, you will use your parent and step parents information. It's okay if the student is not listed as a dependent on their 2018 taxes, as long as they provided more than half of their support. So it really, whatever was claimed on the taxes isn't a key factor in this. It's really going to be who is in the household themselves. Is it mom and dad, or one parent who's remarried with a spouse? So in trying to determine who that parent is, this is a helpful little guide to determine who the parents are, because maybe the student lives with their grandparents or fostered parents. So this is a nice little sheet to go through and answer questions. Are your parents married to each other? Yes and no. Do they live together? Yes, no. And then it tells them exactly how to do it. So if you do need this, this is out on, I believe it's on the Federal Student Aid website. Or you can let me know too, and I can always give it to you. Along the bottom there, the following people are not your parents unless they have legally adopted you. So a widowed step parent, if mom or dad, whoever was remarried, and your parent passed away, that the widowed step parent is not considered a parent unless they legally adopted them. That goes for grandparents, any foster parents, guardians, brothers or sisters, stuff. Unless they are legally adopted and went through those correct channels to get that actually legalized. There could be a lot of times where they live with their older brother or older sister. Doesn't mean that they are the parent, though. So the parent's responsibilities. Putting a parent's information on the FAFSA, this does not hold a parent to loans. This does not say that they are responsible for any loans. This is not them being held down to being a cosigner for any loans. Why we have the parent information on there is so that the Department of Education and the university or college can get a good idea of what that household looks like. Where is that student coming from? What does the household income look like? What are how many people are in the house? It is really important to have that parent information on there. Not providing that information for the parent really could make them ineligible for any grants or loans as well, and it'll delay the process too. So the parents should know that anything that is on the FAFSA it cannot be shared with anyone else unless the student is signed to FERPA, which is the Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act. So none of this information is shared. We're not going to share how much mom made or how much dad made or how much income you have or don't have. So the parent really is just giving us an overall view. This is not holding them to any loans. This is not them being responsible for the tuition, fees, housing, all that stuff. We're just getting an overview of the household. Hey, one of the other mistakes on here is not entering the school when they're on the FAFSA because maybe they haven't made up their mind yet on where they want to go. And that's okay if they haven't. They can enter up to 10 school codes. This link here at the bottom is a link to each code for every school. You don't have to have it, but it's easy to have it. You can do a search on it, and schools can also be added later on, but like I said, they can add up to 10 schools. So even if they just enter their top school or if they know for sure. But if they don't know, still have them enter what their probability is of where they're going to go. Otherwise, it's not going to get anywhere. It does not go to a school unless that school is entered into the FAFSA. So this is what it looks like on the FAFSA. I had the 18-19 one up there for the school year, but you can put in the state, the city is optional, the school name is optional, and then hit search, and it will find that school for you. You would just select it and then add it in. If you know the school code, or if you're at the school and they gave it to you, or if they know exactly what they want to do, they can enter in that school code and hit search, and just that school will come up. Okay, so this is one of a common question that we get is if two people are working on the same FAFSA using different devices, how do they sign the FAFSA at the end? Well, two people can't work on it at the same time. That's what that save key was for. So if the parent is in there, they had that save key that they created, did their part, saved it, exit, then the student can go in, use that save key, and get their portion done. But you can't get in there at the same time. So we can't have a parent at home and the kid at school, both on there at the same time. And this one we went over earlier, only the first parent or first person listed on the tax form use the IRS DRT's data retrieval tool. So the Get Transcript option on that IRS website retrieves the information as it appears on the tax return. So the first person listed on that tax return has to be in there. So as I said before, if mom and dad or there's two parents on there and it's parent 2 who's in doing this, they go out and do that data retrieval tool, but it was actually parent 1 who was listed first on the taxes. They need to make sure parent 1 is on there, otherwise that retrieval tool is not going to work for them.
Sarah, this is Eric.
Yeah.
I'll just say that at ICANN, we've worked with a lot of families who the second one listed on and we were still able to do the data retrieval with. So I'm not sure. Yeah, so I'm not sure that I think that might have been something when they were first starting and doing this, but over the last few years, because quite honestly, in a two-parent household, a lot of times dad's listed first, mom's second, and we get a lot, if the mom's bringing it in and created the ID, we're still able to bring it over. So I just wanted to point that out, that I think it might have been something when it was initially going or for the first couple of years, but lately we've had no issue with that problem at ICANN and doing our appointments, whether first or second one listed.
Awesome. Well, that's good to know. I guess we always defaulted thinking that it wouldn't work otherwise. So we've always said just do the first parent. So that's good to know. Thank you for that. Another one of the other questions is if a student born male is a female when they are 18, are they required to register with Selective Service? The answer to this is yes. They do have to, based upon the gender assignment at birth, not gender identity at the time the FAFSA is completed. So if they are in that transition anywhere, if they were born male and are 18, they have to be registered with the Selective Service. They can go out and register themselves, or they can select the option on the FAFSA as a please register me, and the FAFSA will send it out there to do that too. Okay. Some resources out there. There's quite a bit of information. You can always, there's so many different places to get your questions answered. FAFSA.gov is going to give a lot of it. There's a lot of different tools on there, and little tools as they're filling out the FAFSA as well. A couple of the other common things that we had too that I thought of after submitting this is the household size is one of the questions on the FAFSA. Sometimes they're not sure who's all included in that household size. So it'll ask for anybody who would be considered a dependent student. So anybody, those list of questions of dependency, who in the household all fits that, plus any parents, whether it's one parent, two parents, but if there's any siblings who are younger than 24 or don't have kids, then they would be considered part of that household. Legal name is also a big one. For example, if their name is Timothy, but their legal name is Timothy, then we need to have them to use their legal name that's on there, not the name that they normally go by. So always make sure that they use their legal name because it'll create problems every year. And also let families know if there's financial information that's different now than what it was listed on those taxes. Because we use prior years, so 2 years previous of taxes, a lot of things can change in 2 years. So I don't want families to be discouraged by putting their tax information on there if something happened where they lost a job or job change or whatever the case may be. If there's a difference, work with the school, and the school will help get those things figured out. And we'll work with them on that. We realize that income can change, and we'll figure that out together. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, please submit any questions that you have, and we'll try to answer those right now. If there are any questions at all about anything Sarah covered, or maybe there was another topic within this that didn't hit on that you have a question on, please just use your question pane box here, and we'll try to answer any questions you have right now.
The biggest thing too is to reflect to families and students that this may seem daunting, but it's really not. So don't get overwhelmed by the FAFSA. Don't get scared of it. It's pretty self-explanatory going through it, and there's always people around to help that you don't have to pay. The high school counselors can help. Admissions counselors to wherever college they're going to, but don't get overwhelmed by it. It's to reflect to them, not to families. Don't get overwhelmed.
Sarah, I know one question came up. What about undocumented students or students that are U.S. citizens or eligible non-citizens, but the parents are undocumented? How to fill out the FAFSA that way?
So if that is the case, then the Social Security number, we want them to enter as all zeros. Otherwise, it'll kick back as rejected. So if the parents are undocumented, meaning they don't have a Social Security number, have them enter in all zeros for that social. And then they won't be able to sign it either, because they won't have to have, or won't be able to create an FSA ID without that Social Security number. So they would have to there's an option to go to sign to print it and print off a signature page. So we would actually have to have them sign it that way instead of using that FSA ID.
Kind of along the lines with that signature page, we did have a question. Do you recommend a signature page be mailed in, as it says on the form, or turned in directly to the financial aid office?
Turn it into the financial aid office. We can take care of it faster than mailing it in.
Okay. And then another question, is there a way to submit a FAFSA without parent info if the student is dependent?
If they believe that there are special circumstances that they should be considered independent, when it comes to the questions about parent information, it'll ask, do you want to enter, or it'll say maybe along the lines of, you should be a dependent student, you should enter parents' information, do you want to, yes or no? And they can select no, that they don't want to, and then it'll prompt them again to answer another question of, okay, but is there a special circumstance as to why? And if there is, then they can select yes, that there is a special circumstance. It'll skip over that parent information, go through the rest of it. When it comes into the college, we would actually ask why they feel like they should be independent, and we'll ask for additional information to verify all that. And sometimes they should be a dependent student, so we'd have to have them go back in. But there is a way, if they just answer no, that they're going to not include their parent information, and then answer those prompted questions as to why.
And they would not, they would not get an EFC number at that time, but it would direct them to talk to the financial aid office.
Correct.
Sarah?
So there's more pushback to it.
Got another question for you. When we asked the question about turning the signature page into the financial aid office, what did you mean by turning it into the financial aid office there? What was the question?
The signature page?
Yes.
Yeah, if they take it to the financial aid office of the school that they're going to, we can actually turn that into the Department of Education faster than them mailing it in.
Another question is child support income part of the financial aid calculation?
It is. There is a question on there as far as how much child support is paid or received. And it'll also ask for any food assistance or housing assistance, VA benefits, stuff like that. It does not ask for proof, but it is a question on there.
Another question, in a case where a student and his or her family came to the United States in 2019 and they do not have 18 taxes, should the tax information part be left blank?
If they did not file taxes, there is an option on there that they did not file or not going to file. So if they didn't have to file, then they would select that they're not going to file. If they enter an income in and selected, say they've entered in $20,000 that they earned, hand entered that in, but also selected that they are not going to file, it'll prompt the school to ask for more information and verify what's going on.
And I want to point out, if they did file taxes in 2018 in the country where they came from, they would put down already completed, but it's a foreign tax return, and they'd manually need to put that information in.
Right.
Another clarification as far as turning it in, that I can answer this. The signature page, it wouldn't be the high school they're attending, it'd be the college or colleges that they're applying to is where
right.
they would turn that in. So.
Yeah, I'm sorry if it's unclear.
No, that's somebody somebody was just asking about that. And Sarah, I'm curious, if they're applying to more than one, or they've got more than one down on the FAFSA, they would just need to turn that into one of them, though, to get that signed?
Well, it depends on who they're actually going to apply with. I can't say this about every school, but the majority of schools don't do very much with the FAFSA or what's required as far as verifying information until they've applied to the school either. So if they've got 10 different schools listed down, when they know who they're applying with, that's really the ones that you want to go to. And maybe they're applying at 2 or 3 different schools, so they should verify, you can always check in with the admissions counselors and ask them, is my FAFSA okay? I submitted it? Did everything work out? Do you have everything I need? So it's really to the ones that you're applying to.
Now, another question from someone. If a parent uses the data retrieval tool and pulls in their tax information, but doesn't have their taxes in front of them, and doesn't have a copy, is there any problem with parents estimating their wages then? Married joint return, we got to split that up. Is there a problem with estimating those wages?
It really depends on if that student is selected for verification. Being selected for verification, they say about 30% of all who file FAFSA is selected. But not everybody believes that that's just the case, that it's a random act. So I can't say yes or no. I mean, if they have a really good idea, it's really best practice is to know what that number is between the two of what those wages were and put that correct number in if you can.
Can I just get on my soapbox for a second?
Yep.
I know for my kid, we always tell people to bring them in because sometimes the data retrieval is not going to work, and then we need to manually put it in. But
yeah,
we've had people come in thinking that they know what they have, or hey, I just heard you can pull it in, and that has caused them problems later from what I saw. So I know my encouragement, just like you said, that's correct. If they're close and they're not selected for verification, depending on their income, it could be okay, but I would say, have the information there. There's so many reasons, and really, whatever's pulled over, what both parents have earned from working, wages, salaries, and tips, business income, and foreign income, it really needs to agree. So if it doesn't, I think they're more likely to be selected for verification and cause themselves some extra paperwork later if they didn't bring the paperwork to begin with.
Yeah, it's always better to be safe than sorry. And along with bringing those taxes in when they file the FAFSA, sometimes they're not exactly sure how it's wrote out on their address is wrote out on the taxes. So if it's Ave versus Avenue or DR versus Drive, or where did we put that apartment number at? Because you need the exact address to use that data retrieval tool too. So it's always better to be safe than sorry and bring the taxes with.
Any other questions from anyone out there before we end the webinar today? Any other questions at all? While waiting to see if there's any last minute questions here, again, I just wanted to plug one more time. We're going to do a webinar on Tuesday, December the 3rd at 10 a.m. about verification, getting into more details about that. One of Sarah's colleagues is going to be presenting that. And then on Wednesday, February 5th at 10 a.m., we're going to have a webinar on reading financial aid packages from the Director of Financial Aid at Southwestern Community College presenting on that day. So a couple more that will be coming up. And again, I will be getting information out to everyone about a month ahead of time to sign up for those webinars when they're going to take place. I don't see any other questions now that are on there, so I think we're going to go ahead and end the webinar. Everyone, you've got Sarah's contact information there if you ever have any questions later on for her. But Sarah, thank you very much for taking the time to present today. It's hard to believe that this is coming up in less than a week, the 2021 FAFSA, and getting out there and for students to be able to fill out. But appreciate you taking the time to present to us today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, everyone, have a great rest of the week, and really appreciate you again taking the time to attend today. This is going to be recorded. I know there were some folks that couldn't jump on board. Maybe you know of some. This is going to be recorded, and I'm going to get that information out later on where to access this recording. So thanks, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll see you down the road. Thank you.